Thank you so much. So nice for you to come. So I'm going to try and introduce the beginning of this project and how it started. And it actually started in Athens when I was here in 2019 with a colleague and friend of mine. And we both work with myth and the reception of antiquity in our works. And we're both very interested in gardens as a space and an action and a way of connecting to nature, but on a very sort of amateurish way. I mean, we're not we weren't very knowledgeable about these things, but have become obviously much more knowledgeable about it. And and we wanted to create a garden that was talking about how mythology and plants are in a lot of ways interconnected in language and also in all sorts of rituals and in ornament and in worship in the ancient Greece. And we had a really good meeting with the director of the Antique Museum, the Museum of Antiquity, Vinny, who was very interested in hosting this exhibition. So we started planning it and had a really good collaboration with her on what kinds of work should be included, and everything that they had that they offered us to use in the exhibition all had very deep connection to the plant world and to myth and to the language about plants. And so it was a lovely collaboration. And this is basically this was the first that you saw when you came to the exhibition, and it's a satire. Yeah. Dancing, and it's very cheeky. It's a very cheeky satire, and it has set the tone maybe a little bit, because it was a celebratory exhibition as well as an exhibition that dealt with maybe more darker, complicated issues of our relationship to nature. And so I'm gonna, and these were my sculptures. I have to say that my colleague pulled out of the exhibition quite early in the production phase. Of course, she was part of the whole planning and the design and things like that. But I finished it, and also that's why it's my works that I'm going to show you today. I'm not really going to talk about the collaboration because that kind of that ended early on. So yeah. So this is an example of this is pretty early in the exhibition. So it developed over 4 months because it was a very long show. Usually when you do an exhibition, it's not that long. So it was very good that it was 4 months, because a garden needs time to develop and to go through all kinds of phases, which it certainly did. We had many problems, because when you make a garden inside, basically you take the plants out of the natural sort of environment. You take it out of the system that it's a part of, which means that you don't really have you don't really have the ecosystem. So we had lots of problems with pests. We had 4 or 5 different kinds of pests. So there was a lot of work with it, but that was all right, because basically gardens is work. Because if you don't work in your garden, then the garden is not a garden anymore. It's very transient in its nature. It doesn't really, it's a garden because of what you do with it. If you don't work in it, then it's just basically it becomes nature again. So the whole work aspect was surprisingly a lot, but it was also very it was a big learning experience. I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, and also the work. Say a little bit more about that. I decided early on that I wanted to have it as a very beautiful thing, but also as a sort of practical thing. So I decided to use the space underneath the flower beds as a sort of extra sort of a little stage or whatever you can call it, where I put all the tools and the watering pans and then all these things that I used quite constantly. So it had a look of maybe a little bit of a science lab, and also sort of something just extremely sort of what is it called, lush. It had very sort of, it grew a lot, there was lots of flowers, and it grew quite wild at times. Well, sorry. And this is the oleander, and all of the plants, a lot of the plants in there had very specific references to myth. And this is one of my favorite ones. This is the oleander, grows wild here. It's a native to the Mediterranean area. And it has a lot of, you can use it for, it's a medicinal plant. It's also very poisonous. I don't really know how that works, but it actually, there's probably ways of using it that, that's good for, for hangovers, for example. You could use it for hangovers, I read somewhere. So the oleander got its name from myth. Leander, a young man, was very in love with a girl called Hero, and he swam across the river to visit her every night. And then one night, the lamp blew out, so he got lost in the river. He drowned. Next day, the girl Hero looks for him on the beach, and yells his name, Oleander, Oleander, and that's why, that's how it got its name, because when she finally found him, he had a bouquet of flowers in his hand, and that's why this plant, got that name. And throughout the exhibition, we had all these references to loss, to war, to sickness, to sorrow, because basically a garden is a bit of a, you can say a garden is a mirror in a way. It's sort of mirroring your effort and your desires and your interests and all these things. And gardens and nature is really also a kind of a mirror, because it shows you exactly what you do. And so we wanted to make it sort of a kind of a hybrid between something really beautiful and also something very doomed in a way, or at least very troubled. And this is the biome of the oleander, and this is a statue of the couple. So yeah, and this is the basic it's the same flower bed, but also two different stages. And so you can see that it's really, really sort of a lush and quite beautiful sort of a garden environment, but also the yellow things are there to catch all the the fungus gnats, which is a little sort of a little mite that eats at the root of the plants, and basically they were all over the place. They were just they just flew around, and there were so many of them, and they really took a lot of effort to deal with. But again, we had lots of meetings with gardeners from the botanical garden about these things, and then they had them as well. It's just basically plants are so vulnerable if you take them out of the real sun and the air. It just basically can't really it doesn't do so well on their own. So that's what they are, the yellow ones. And this is some of the sculpture. This is the Aphrodite sculpture that was in the show. This is one of mine. This is there's sort of a bust that's very sweaty. That was, also, of course, referencing, lots of heat, lots of wetness, lots of, extreme sort of circumstances. Again. So there you have some of the, and it's from my Instagram stories because I lost all my photos, so I just had to take it from my stories. It's just not, this is just, yeah. It's a lovely fawn that I really, I have a special story with that fawn from different projects that I did in Rome. So it means a lot that he was also there. And there we have the Melpomene, which is the goddess of tragedy. And we have the plants, or the plant columns there, which, sorry, sorry. Oh, this is a bit early, maybe, but let's just do it. I continued to do, to work on this thing in Rome. So I had 2 months in Rome where I did a big sort of silk print work. And in a way it was fitting that I did this work in Rome because Rome is there's excess there. It's lots of, gluttony, there's lots of beauty, almost too much. It just becomes a lot there. Where my feeling here in Athens is that it's definitely a different kind of vibe, it's a different kind of aesthetic here. And in Rome it's just, there's just too much, So, and as you can see, there's a lot of things going on, and this is hanging in the show. And it's 2 or 3, it's 3 stages of sort of, there's a party, and there's a feast, and there's the sort of the columns and vases of grass. So these kind of these landscapes in a way that are both funny and sort of silly, but also kind of have all these sort of references to tragedy and also references to myth, and I collected lots of plant material and fruit, and basically I had a great time and had lots of fun doing it. So yeah, and that's another 2 pictures of the show. In the show, we had a river. This is sorry, I've just forgot what it's called. It's Cocytus. It's a river from running in the underworld, a river of wails, sort of the river of tears or crying or wailing, running through it, and it comes out of a cornucopia, like a horn of abundance, with a face of Aphrodite on it. So just to say that it's sort of a continuous thing. It's always more. There's always more wailing. There's always more sorrow. There's always more pain. In this garden. And underneath there we have it's called an erotic fragment. So there's also there's all these references to all these really dark things. There's also lots of love in it, and because also a garden is about it's an erotic thing also, which was definitely one of the things that we wanted to work with as well. I'm just going to go back a bit. Just to talk a bit more about the plants. So they were all historical plants, and they were all used in daily life, and they were all sort of they all were written about and talked about and and important, in that culture. And I think what we were really interested to in it was this the level of connection that there seemed to be in that time to the natural world, something that we have entirely lost. And because we're separated, from plants. Even in language, we don't even talk about nature as anything else but a sort of a resource. And that's something that we wanted to. Of course, we can't do anything about it with just a simple show, but you can sort of show that these connections are actually achievable just by learning and doing and talking about it. Yeah. Sorry, I have to look at my notes. Maybe I should just gonna talk a little bit about what I've been doing here. So I've been thinking about how to take this project further, and I want to do another show, but I can't really do it like this, of course, because it's not in the museum anymore, and it has to have a different sort of perspective and a different sort of angle. So I've been thinking a lot about how to take it further and how to work with plants in a sort of more contemporary way, and how to take these plants and make us think about the state of the planet or the earth or our lives as they are right now. And I've been reading some really interesting things while I've been here. This is really an interesting book. It's a man who travels to Chernobyl and has traveled there several times and not collected plants, but thinking about plants. And this woman, Alice Tudor, has made these photograms, not photographs. So basically making pictures of light with these plants collected in this disaster area. And I was thinking about doing a bit of the same here, but I haven't gotten around to it because I needed a car and I wanted to go to Mount Penita and collect plants from out there. But that's gonna, I'm gonna do that later on. Or I'm gonna definitely work with the herbarium in some way or another. And then I've been reading about environmental problems here, and that was very illuminating because I had no idea that how severe climate change were actually, in ancient times. There was deforestation, there was erosion, there was irrigation, there was drainage, and they basically changed the landscape quite severely and sort of made laid the groundwork almost for how we look at nature today, and also even in philosophy, because there was a separation happening in the thinking about nature, because before, maybe in the ancient times, there was a deeper connection, whereas the philosophers started to sort of put things into hierarchies and to make the thinking was around how nature is, and plants and animals and everything really, how they were sort of, only existing to serve humans, basically. So there was a divide already created in those times. And then obviously Christianity later on, and the whole separation really started in the thinking and in the beliefs, and it started very early. And I had no idea how that came about. So that's been really interesting to read about, because I think it's really necessary for us to have the long perspective to see when did these things happen, how did the thinking start, and because maybe obviously people who really know these things, they knew already. I didn't know, and I'm sure lots of people don't know, how, and how things were, starting to change. So that's been really, really interesting, and I've been thinking about, extinction, because there was also extinction happening already in in ancient times, especially with this one that you see up there, the one to the left. It's called a silphium, and it was a very valuable plant. And it was over-harvested, and it was extinct, and has been extinct for 2,000 years. And now I think it maybe has, been found again, maybe, or some close relative, which is hopeful. I think it's really hopeful, because it just, goes to show that actually there's things can regenerate, which is really, important. It's important to have hope, I think. And I think gardening is a hopeful activity, because you do, if you're in your garden, you plant something, you plant for, for next year, or, the next year after, because, you have to believe there's another year, basically. And I think also this one down there is called the vegetal, and it was also very, very rare, and it has been found again. So I really like herbariums because it's very specific, and it sort of pinpoints the exact time where you see the plant, you collect the plant, and there's all these details. And I think that's sort of just a really strong sort of notion, and sort of a strong sort of document that I really personally like. And I want to work with herbarium, and maybe not in a sort of very classical way, but in some way where it's a bit distorted, or, sort of closer to, to the way I usually, do things. But definitely being down here and looking through all these herbariums and reading about all these plants has been super, super interesting. So I'm already on the last page. Oh my God. Sorry, it's been, yeah. So, and I think I want to make a publication to follow this the second version of the exhibition. I'm still going to work with plants. I'm still going to work with with myths, ancient myths, but it's not going to, as I said, it's not going to be so romantic or so dramatic. Maybe it's going to be closer to to some some ideas of the of science fiction or the future, even though we already are kind of in the future. But just thinking about how can a future garden look like. I mean, what do they actually look like? That's just a a thing I've been thinking about, and I'm going to try and do that. And the book that I'm going to make, I think I'm going to try and do it in 3 acts, and have a sort of a structure to it that's a bit like it's not a play, because it's not a play, it's a book, but just a little bit like a tragedy, that it's going to have a choir, it's going to have a a sort of a tale, So I'm going to try to do that. And so talking flowers, maybe use that, and just in general think about how to use the things that I've learned here, and the things I've been looking at here, which is all these really, I'm missing a piece, so that's here. So yeah, I don't really think I have a lot more to say about this, because I'm getting kind of nervy. So if you want to ask questions.